So we have 4 speakers on the 4 scientific working groups. The first being data protocols and management, and I believe Volker KREY will give that talk. Volker.
Yeah, thanks a lot, John. I'll try to be quick. So we basically, during the session on Monday, touched upon 3 bigger clusters of ongoing work, or rather also highlighting the need for engagement of the scientific working group. One is that is actually based on the observation that starting this effort something like more than 10 years ago now, that the IMC data template has been used by dozens of different exercises to collect data, and has been increasingly difficult to keep an overview and coherence across different applications here. And so one of the insights from this is that we basically need better tools for working with those data templates. And that is, on the one hand, in particular, there is a need on tools that support those who run the exercises in creating new templates, making sure they're not reinventing new variables and so on. There is a recent package that was released that is one step into that direction, but there is definitely more to be done here, addressing the challenge related to this, many in parallel as well as large-scale applications here. I mean, if you think of the AR6 submission process, which I think featured something like 3,000 scenarios from close to 150 different models, that basically shows the challenge that we are facing here. So further professionalizing that work via appropriate tooling is an insight here. And that also relates to communication, where email that we're still commonly using often is not able to address the needs, but rather switching to alternative platforms here is something that was discussed, and that needs a bit more follow-up to kind of come up with additional or improved solutions here that are future-proof. Related to that, we also discussed the possibility of running a survey with the larger IMC community to better understand user needs related to IMC data template use. It needs a bit more thinking and elaborating on a survey, but I think that would also help with identifying the most relevant next steps. Then, as basically a third item here, a topic that came up is, and it's not a new one. I think I've heard this probably consistently across during the last 10 years, is basically better ways of sharing experience and efforts of data processing and harmonization. And many of us work on parallel tools and data sets. I think with the IMC having grown so much, we're in a much better position to become aware of these efforts and join forces. I mean, we had actually in the method section today one case where there was a realization that on one specific tool, there are basically 3 different groups working on relevant implementations. And as a follow-up, it might be very useful to connect those efforts rather than everybody doing their own thing and possibly replicating work. And what was specifically mentioned in this context is resolving discrepancies between different international and national data sources. Very important, given that IMC originally focusing kind of on global analysis, but now having a real breadth of covering a real breadth of national and subnational scale analysis. This challenge of kind of combining different data sets from different sources has become even more important. And there were basically 2 very concrete steps, which I can actually better illustrate on the next couple of slides. So one suggestion was, many of you will know the Zenodo archive, which is hosted by CERN in Geneva. It's a European funded activity. I'm not aware whether there might be other similar platforms in the Americas, in Asia, which we should maybe look into. But one of the important takeaways here is Zenodo offers the possibility of creating so-called communities. So allows kind of combining different data sets that are relevant to tagging different data sets being relevant to a specific community. And for example, the industrial ecology community has established such a repository or community under Zenodo a few years ago. And it would be very easy to do the same for IMC. So that one has a simple entry point for finding relevant data sets and sharing information. And then the next one, please, next slide. What we actually did a few years ago, but I wanted to use it as a reminder here, is to create a GitHub organization under IMC that allows also bringing relevant data sets and tools together. And one very simple solution might be to fork repositories that others that are very community relevant, that different community members develop, to fork this under the IMC organization. So this basically serves as an entry point of tool development that is going on out there, so one doesn't have to search again multiple repositories and so on. Yeah, I should leave it at that.
Great, thanks very much, Volker. That was extremely informative. Next, we have evaluation and diagnostics. I believe Shinichiro FUJIMORI is going to do the presentation. Shinichiro.
Right, thank you. So this year, in overall, we didn't have so much organized community activity regarding the model validation or evaluations. But we had three materials from three speakers. And one is about summarizing the current critiques to the IAMs and propose some possible solutions. The second one is about a GCAM exercise on income distribution. And the third one is from me about the national scenario framework proposal. And we had relatively little time to discuss, but one topic was about the open source code. And I think currently many of the IAMs have been already in publicly available or using GitHub and so on. And that might be one of the responses to IAM communities, and it might be good directions, but it's also true that it is not sufficient to make our scenarios transparent, and therefore we should think about that. And the other point is, yeah, modular-based model development could also be one of the ways to make more model evaluation and validation meaningful and useful. And from, yeah, so as I said, there was not so much very organized materials, but for the next year, I think it might be better to have, like, some summary of the current IAM model station in terms of documentation. For example, I think I observed that many models have also now documentation papers in scientific journals, and therefore it might be better to summarize what models are now have in that way, and so on. And another just remark from me is the related to my proposal, national scenario framework. Actually, it's not greatly fit with this SWG, and also given the talks from the plenary, today's materials, and I think it might be also worthwhile to consider to make a new SWG about the national scenarios. I think for the next coming years, national scenarios would have more important role than before. So I will pop up at some point in steering committee, but it will be worth to share this idea to all of you. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much, Shinichiro. Next, we have once again Detlef VAN VUUREN on scenarios, I believe. Detlef.
Yeah, that's correct. And I can be relatively quick on the first few slides because they are a bit of a repetition of what I presented on Monday, which is that the SSP framework has been really successful with thousands of papers being based on it. And I think it's actually exactly doing what we had hoped it would do, which provide community scenarios, so make the research more comparable, and also allowing people to have a standardized set of population and GDP scenarios available. But we also realized that these scenarios are now almost 10 years old, and given also the remarks earlier about being up to date, we have to update here. Can you go to the next slide? But that is not so easy for community scenarios, simply because they have also a role to be somehow this constant form of information, for instance, in the assessment cycles. I think you have to click a few times, John. Another one, yeah, and to do another one, yeah, perfect. So that means that we already discussed on Monday that there are different elements to the SSPs, and you might want to think of different speeds of update speeds for different elements. And so the framework as a whole, we might want to update that on a much slower speed than, for instance, rethinking some of the quantitative projections. And yeah, by now we feel that it's really important to update at least the quantitative projections for population and GDP, but also to think of an expansion of the variable sets. And you can go to the next slide. So in the breakout session on Monday, we mostly discussed the timeline from now to seeing whether we can provide an updated set of GDP and population scenarios by the summer of next year. And for that, we already had a first webinar in November with Iconics. We also had the presentations here in the scientific working group. The thing that we now added during last Monday's discussion was that we wanted to have early next year a discussion on open issues. We realized, for instance, that the COVID uncertainty was again much larger than we might have thought last September. And so we want to think a little bit what that means. We want to also have a dialogue on downscaling of demographic and economic variables. The demographic group of IIASA has promised to have information available by around March, so that information can then be given to the OECD modeling group. And so by May, we would like to have initial population and economic projections that could be presented in scenario form at IIASA, so that we also can have a community discussion about them and have them available summer next year. Final slide. So what we also did last Monday was discussing what kind of information do we want to be there. Yeah? So originally we had a core set where we mostly focused on GDP, population, and urbanization, and to some degree land use and emissions. And that is a relatively limited set. And we feel that there are reasons why you want to have that core set limited. It will mean that you don't allow a lot of uncertainty for those variables. But at the same time, we also saw that there is a lot of interest in the community to use already made variables that are SSP aligned. And so we discussed whether we might want to expand that core set or in other forms make information available. And things that people wanted to have were gridded population and GDP, information on migration, on labor force participation, on structural change, on income inequality. And income inequality is actually so much aligned with some of the storylines of the SSPs that it might be a very important variable to think of. Information on household, gender-related variables, maybe related to education and income gap, information on resources and on total factor productivity. And so I think we should be able to release data on these variables as well. And in some cases, we might want to call it part of the core set. Maybe in other cases, we want to have multiple sets of information available. And for instance, for gridded population, there are multiple groups doing that. And we could also make sure that we simply have a link to those different population sets and indicate what the pros and cons of different sets are. But this is what we discussed, so I can move to the next scientific group.
Great. Thank you, Detlef, very much for that very thoughtful update on where things are and where you're going, which I think will be a major activity, it sounds like, over the next year. Finally, we have, I believe, Elmar KRIEGLER talking on behalf of the working group on scenarios for climate-rated financial analysis. Elmar.
Yeah, thank you, John. And I put the first slide on our charter statement just to remind people what the SWG is about. It's the main goal is to facilitate discussion of the potential use of scenarios for financial analysis between members of the IAM community and also of the IAM community with potential users in the financial sector. And it's both about, I think of interest is both the discussion about physical risk, the risk of climate change on assets, as well as transition risk, so the risk of climate policy for financial assets. We do operate a mailing list of those who are interested in the SWG, and any member of the IMC or from a member institution of the IMC is welcome to sign up if interested. So in this case, please send an email to Jay and myself and Monica. So this year we basically informed each other about ongoing activities, and there are many activities of our community in this space. We reported on our work with the Network for Greening the Financial System. So that's not work that is reported here by the scientific working group itself, but by member institutions. So that's work with the NGFS. And then we had other contributions from Alex Koberle, the work they do at Imperial with the finance sector, by Roberto Schäfer on a project they had with the Brazilian Federation of Banks. And also Vaibhav Chaturvedi came in with a project they did on India. And that was then followed up by a discussion on what to do in the upcoming year. So definitely it was confirmed that there's a great desire to learn from each other and to be informed about what's going on in the rich set of activities we have with the finance sector. And in this context, there was the idea of maybe organizing a workshop in the upcoming year, could be virtual, where we present some of the work to each other, and that might not only involve IM people, but also could involve representatives of the finance sector that are basically collaborating with those IM colleagues in these projects. There's also the scenario forum coming up at IIASA in summer, and there are some sessions that are on this topic, and it would be interesting for the SWG to link up with these sessions. And finally, generally, when we think of facilitating exchange, big topics continue to be how to best reach out and connect to potential scenarios users in the finance sector, because there's an entire chain of bringing the scenario information in a format that is useful to the users and catering to user needs that need to be gone through, and learning more about that will be important. But another question, which is also relevant for the SWG, is how to improve the representation of finance in IAMs itself. And so that could be potential other topics to pick up, for example, at the next year's meeting, at our session at the next year's meeting. And then down there, you find our webpage. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Elmar. I appreciate all four of you keeping on time. We're now actually ahead of schedule, much to my surprise. I also noted a pleasing thing, and that is there seems to be a lot of synergies between the four scientific working groups. I think given the workload on all the leaders of those groups, I think that's probably a good thing that ought to be pursued and exploited. Elmar just ended up with the obvious linkage between the activities of the scenarios for finance and the scenarios activity generally, and that could be linked to diagnostics and data protocols as well. So I don't know if that was planned, but it's very pleasing to see that level of synergy. I can't see with my projecting the slides if there are any hands up. If there are none up, I suggest we move on to our final half hour. We have two things to do: our second words announcement session, and then some final words from a few of us. Okay, so this is our second awards announcement session. We did one on Monday where we awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award to Nakachevich, and the Young Researchers Award to David Leclerc. So now we have two more awards to give out, the Extraordinary Contributions to the Field Award and the Poster Award. Since I was unable to get up 3 o'clock this morning, I've asked Detlef VAN VUUREN to again do as he's done all week, jump in and because he organized the final votes on the poster to describe that, which I bleary-eyed this morning barely understood in the first place, but it seems like a lot of effort was put into the judging and whatnot. I think the first award the IMC has given out, which must be almost 10 years old now, is the award for extraordinary contributions to the field. This was when the IMC really started coming into its own and was making major contributions to various community activities of significant importance beyond the community, not least of which was the scenario process, the RCP, SSB, SBA, et cetera, et cetera. In fact, I do believe several of the first awards went to people involved in that, including Detlef VAN VUUREN, who was the first winner for the original RCP special issue and pushing that forward. So as you can see here, this is unlike the Lifetime Achievement Award, a award made to somebody for kind of recent but very significant, and I think I made up the word extraordinary, somebody who really went above and beyond on behalf of the science of integrated assessment and the building of the community. I will remind you that for the Lifetime Achievement Award and this award, we tried to do them as surprises. So we are going to allow the award winner a few words here, but schedule a longer talk either in a webinar before the next annual meeting or at latest during the next annual meeting to give a more thoughtful and practiced response for what it means and what the work that was engaged in contributed. So this year in the the voting nominations and voting on this, I think we had a clear winner who used to be a young researcher, not that long ago, but someone who's very well known to all of you, and actually was appeared in the last session as well. And the winner is, next slide, of this year's Extraordinary Contributions to the Field of IM is Shinichiro Fujimori, who I feel very close to, and I know IIASA folks do, because he was not that long ago a young summer scientist, and I think a signature member of that select group, and kind of I think of him as a ambassador to the world, sitting in Japan. So why he got this award is not just for his own excellent work in Japan and helping a couple of other folks build up the modeling forum in Japan, but also at the same time, even as he moved from NICE, the National Institute for Environmental Studies, where he still works part-time, to Kyoto University, helping build out integrated assessment in Asian developing countries all over Asia, which is a signature contribution, I think, of the National Institute for Environmental Studies. So he's kind of done many things, also has a young child and whatnot. So I think we all found his performance, in particular, working in a couple of projects, publishing a paper in Nature, being the lead on a paper in Nature Climate Change on national IM analysis, exploring a range of targets in individual countries. This was mentioned actually in the previous session. This is something that the community has taken on board, where initially, as was stated by Volker, Volker KREY, we were doing, as a community, mostly focusing attention on global scenarios. These have now been downloaded, synchronized, and compared with national studies, and Shinichiro, particularly in Asia, but even beyond there, has done an incredible job over the last few years. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Shinichiro, or Shin as he is known to most of us, who was a truly deserving award winner this year, and quite deserving. So Shinichiro, would you like to say a few words? I know it's late there and early here, as we always get on these calls, but if you're still awake, we'd appreciate a few words of response.
Thank you very much. It's very surprising, and I didn't expect at all. And I have nothing to say now. I don't feel like I'm undeserved, and I feel like, you know, I always think that I am developing my capacity, and I am trying to catch up with many great colleagues in our community, and so yeah. No,
Great.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you all. I really appreciate all of this community's colleagues, and without your contributions, I'm not standing here. And my special thanks to these colleagues. At first, I would like to thank to NIS, in particular Toshi, Kiyoshi, Mikiko, and already passed away, but Morita Tsuneki, who did made AIM team first, and then, you know, I'm standing at their basement, and now I left NIS physically, but I'm still involved in AIM modeling team, and I'm trying to do my best to lift up the AIM as well as, you know, Asian modeling communities. And I would like to express thanks to my wife, who give me an opportunity to work these days. We have now a small kid, and she has a maternity leave, but I'm working. I feel a bit, feel guilty, but yeah, I really thank to my family as well. Sorry, my poor speech, but just express my honest feeling.
Great, thanks for that incredible, personal response, and showing, as always, great humility. But as you can see, there's been a veritable explosion of congratulatory notes in the chat box, which I think makes us all happy and proud of your accomplishments. So congratulations once again. We'll probably hear from you. We will hear from you sometime between now and the next year's awards. I know you're covering a lot of bases, so it's even impossible for anyone, even you, to kind of summarize what it's been like in a good way. So I thought you did a great job responding in a very personal way, which is, I think, what we all hope for. So congratulations one final time, Shinichiro. We wanted you to know that all you do for the community is very much appreciated by all of us across the world. So next, we move on to the poster award for this year with Detlef VAN VUUREN explaining the process, which I have to say, even though I was on the selection committee up until the last, I don't fully understand. So I think only Detlef could do this job. Detlef, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, John. Yeah, so we had a poster committee, and there were 9 people in the committee. Only 2 judges had looked at all posters, so were able to rate all the posters. Among them, Shinichiro. So again, showing how important he is for our community. So the jury consisted of Shinichiro Fujimori, Peter Ross, Keivan Giai, John Wyant, Jennifer Morris, Roberto Schaefer, Sarita Vitpatan, and Jay Edmonds. And what we have done is we have assigned among the members of the jury a list of posters. They all had about 30 posters that they had that they were going to and enjoy the presentations. And but also had a look of whether they like these posters particularly. And all the posters were evaluated, and then we had a discussion in more detail about the post, what we liked about the posters and what we didn't. I have to emphasize especially that the poster session is a very important part of our conference. There is a certain amount of time that we can dedicate to presentations, but thanks to the poster session, we can even share more information from different teams, more research among the community. So I think it's a very important part of the of our conference, and therefore I also hope that in the next conferences the attendance of the poster session will even grow further. I personally thought that the platform worked reasonably well, this spatial chat function, but it is a bit, so we also got other evaluations, so let's also have a look how that works. The next slide is not about the winning posters, but the high scoring posters. And we had, in the end, about 10 posters that we discussed as potential winners. And these are 3 that were among those last 10. And I just wanted to emphasize why we liked some of these posters. So the poster on the left as was presented by David Leclerc is about integrating equity in global pathways for biodiversity. I think it is really an interesting topic. It's something innovative that we hadn't seen before, but we also liked very much the way that the poster was presented with very clearly the ability to get a an impression of what is in there quite fast. The middle poster, which is also among the last that we considered by Panagiotis Frakos, or at least presented by Panagiotis, it's about COVID, and we liked it for being relevant, being presenting information that is really up to date, and we also, there was a lot of interest in the information that was presented in that particular poster. The poster on the right is by Ben Matthews, and as you can see immediately, there's a lot of information presented on that poster. So we really like the amount of ideas that were presented on that poster. And also it's about interactive modeling, but the poster itself also worked a bit interactive. You had to find your way through the poster, and we thought it was really nicely done. But I would now like to come to the final 2 winners, because we in the end decided to give to share the award this year. So these are the 2 winners of this year. Kimon Keramidas, sorry, and Yang Wu. Kimon is here. Thanks. Yang Wu apparently didn't join us now for this afternoon. We liked both posters. Kimon's poster, both posters we thought were really nicely presented. I had the nice balance between the text, but also especially presenting graphs and easily telling the story. I think of the poster on the left, it almost has a comics way of presenting with figures and then small comments about what is actually seen there. So it was really easy to get that story across. We also thought it was important work with the community needing to start looking more into detail in different sectors and also starting to work more on material flows and combining material flows and energy mitigation analysis. The post on the right by the PNL team was also really highly appreciated. It's about the road to Glasgow. It's about the evaluation of the NDCs. It actually was presented today by Alan Fawcett in his presentation as well. It's also published already very recently. yeah, we thought both it's the type of research that we want to do as community, but it was also done very well and presented very well. And there was a lot of important information presented in that poster. So those are the two posters we really would like to highlight, and maybe keep on a quick response from you.
Well, thank you. Completely unexpected, especially since behind the scenes trivia, I finished this poster after a sleepless night at the small hours of the morning. So completely unexpected. And well, thank you very much. Yes, sure. And a lot of work will need to be done to finalize the numbers behind the poster, because these are still draft figures. Don't quote me on that. But thank you, and looking forward to whatever happens next.
Okay, thanks. So it's back to you, John.
Great. Great. Okay, so now we're going to say a few final words. I'll start off and then hand it back to Detlef again. A nice tag team going on. Next slide. So actually, first, thank you all for coming and participating so actively. We'd like to acknowledge the great technical support that we got this year from QuicoChat, Zoom, and Spatial Chat. We do hope you will fill out the evaluation questionnaire to let us know how you like the experience working with this set of platform tools. We would like to thank all the participants. The plenary sessions were great. I was able, even early in the morning, to get into a few parallel sessions and a large number of poster sessions. They were all great. It was kind of impressive and inspiring across the board. I'd like to thank the program committee listed here for very hard work. And last, but certainly not least, the chair once again for the program committee, Detlef VAN VUUREN, who's been a ever-present force in both planning the meeting and executing it. And finally, I'd like to thank the three people from the IMC Secretariat, Monica, Sylvia, and Elena, for great work working with us and the software platforms. I don't know which is a bigger challenge, the software or the people, us people. But thank you so much once again for a spectacular job keeping the trains running and the session on time, and helping, speaking personally, helping us refine our slides at the very last minute. I guess the big challenge was to get all the final poster committee meeting run by Detlef was right before this started, which was 3 a.m. my time. So I took a pass, but to actually do that and get it put into the final slides, I can tell you it took a little bit of elbow grease on the part of both of those individuals. So thank you again. And so at that point, with one more thanks to him, I'd like to turn it back over to Detlef for some final words on this year's annual meeting. We do look forward to seeing you next year. We will, I think it's on the next slide, so it's a transition. We do hope you'll share with us your ideas for if we have to go to the hybrid format, how you think, what you would like, how you would like to see that run, and if you know of any tools or software products that you've seen that could facilitate that.
Thank you very much, John. And I also would like to really thank the Secretariat for the great support that we had during this conference, but also in the last half year by testing out different platforms and building the fantastic platform that we had during this meeting. Yeah, so last year we also had the first online conference. That was a mixed experience at that time. I think we already benefited quite a bit from the fact that we had a much larger contribution from different people's much larger audience, but we were still trying to learn how to do an online conference, and we had some technical problems as well. I think this year was already we were picking up on the learning curve, and I think at least as far as I could see it went really smoothly, and the platform that really allow us to to work together. I think the Zoom environment is also really helpful because it somehow it allows for much more direct interaction. People obviously, most of us have worked with Zoom before, so that is also an advantage. But also people can use their cameras. We can directly interact with each other. So I thought that was a helpful addition to what we already had. But then next year, probably we have to go on a learning curve again. Normally, when we had a physical conference, at the end of the conference, we would announce who would be organizing the next conference. As the last physical conference we had was in Asia, in Japan. The next physical conference is scheduled to be in the Americas, and the University of Maryland has offered already a few times now to host it. So we hope to have next year a conference that is at least partly in the real world. But at the same time, I think we have also learned that there is advantage of the online part of the conference as well. So most likely it's going to be a hybrid meeting if COVID allows that, which does allow people that don't want to travel because of climate reasons to participate. It allows people that for other reasons cannot travel to participate in the conference. And at the same time, it might also be that next year there will be still travel restrictions to part of the world. So that might also be a reason why hybrid is something that we want to go for. At the same time, if there is a possibility of physical interaction as well, I think it's attractive to see whether we can return to that. But that does mean that we have to learn now how to organize a hybrid conference. So in addition to the evaluation of this year's conference, where we really would like to get your feedback on what you felt went well or things that could be improved, and we really would like to also hear back from you what you would like to happen at a hybrid meeting. And if you have experiences with that in the next months, half year, please share them with us as well, because we could bring that into the conference and make that conference a success as well. Yeah, I enjoyed the last week a lot. Wrote down quite a bit on things that I learned in the different parallel sessions. As I indicated just 5 minutes ago, I was also enjoying the poster session quite a lot as well again. So I thought it was quite a successful conference, and mostly also because of all the participants being there. We had the 430 registered participants by now. At the end of the conference on a Friday afternoon in Europe, very late in Asia, and we are back to 100, about 100 participants that have made it to the final end. But thank you all.
So with that, I think we're adjourned for this year. See you again next year, if not before. Hopefully we'll see some of you in person. Anybody who has a good COVID projection model, you'll immediately get our attention, I believe. So thanks again, one and all.